we're gonna go back to the Finance Committee and Finance. Chair Finance, Mr. Moss. Chair Moss will go ahead and go back to 13.3.
Okay, we have a short agenda item, 13.3, school construction oversight inspections, training, and reporting amendments. And the motion of the committee is that the board approves R277-471 Draft 2 on second and final reading.
Thank you. Seeing no lights. Board Member Lear? Wait, let me put it on the floor first. We have a motion on the floor that the board approves R277-471, School Construction Oversight Inspections, Training, and Reporting Draft 2 on second and final reading. Member Lear?
I have a question on line 274. It looks like, and I wouldn't so much raise it, it looks grammatical, but I need to know what the verb is before obtain, or the helping verb before obtain on line 274. It looks like there is it looks, because if it says may, it's different than shall, so it seems like it's an important clarification.
And I might ask Deputy Jones, the version I'm looking at, which I think has your markups questions, is a charter school shall seek a certificate. Am I looking at the wrong thing? Okay.
The one I've got
Okay,
shall
I-
obtain,
I pulled the one with Carol's.
or crossed
red
out
lines.
shall, but
Got it,
but,
yes. Maybe Scott.
Yeah, it's just a clerical error.
But no,
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you
It
still-
should just say obtain.
So
But you
Shall
still-
seek.
Obtain, not
the shall
seek.
is crossed out, so it says shall obtain.
Seek should be crossed off instead of shall.
Yeah,
Seek should be crossed off.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it should
it's-
say shall, and shall should not be crossed out.
right. Yes.
Shall obtain.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So clerical correction, I don't think we need any
We can
amendment
fix
on
that.
that.
That's fine, I just needed a
Right,
verb,
without
a
objection.
helping verb.
Okay, without objection, we'll go ahead and make that
Thank you.
clerical change. Seeing no other discussion, there's a motion on the floor that the board approves R277-471, School Construction Oversight Inspections, Training, and Reporting Draft 2 on second and final reading. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes unanimously.
Okay.
Chair Moss?
Item 13.4, Aspire Student Information System Development. We heard about this earlier from the Reports and Requirements Task Force. Recommended action from the committee is that the board lifts the current moratorium on the building and programming of the Aspire SIS and permits USPE staff to build the system to provide the highest level of support and efficiency to the LEAs that choose to use the system, and with the interest of ensuring interoperability with the Utah Schools Information Management System, USIMS, as is required with all other SISs that LEAs choose to utilize.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor as read, and Member Earl has discussion.
Yeah, I know we talked about this earlier today, but I'm curious how many of our districts are using this, or are they not using it and we're just refurbishing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're using, I think it was something, back when we pulled support, it was like 70%. It might have gone down a bit. Could I defer to Deputy Jones? It's quite a large number, but there are concerns that it's not up to date in the operation.
We have approximately 100 LEAs that use Aspire. So, because there are some that are in bid processes right now, so it could
Okay.
change a little bit, so.
And so the work that's going to be done on this will be brought before, or is it just, I'm just wondering. I got feedback from some educators on this when I mentioned it a week ago, and I just had wondered how you're facilitating feedback on moving this forward.
Chair, if I may?
Please.
Please,
Oh, okay, okay, so there is Chair, if I may, there's an Aspire working group that gets information from individual educators across the state, users of the system. So that's how it flows into, so that would be how any enhancements are created is through the user work group.
May I ask another question? So if someone wanted to make recommendations on making this better, they would do what?
They would put them through to the Aspire users group, so that the users group could evaluate those and then see what the feasibility is of incorporating them into the system. If you vote to allow
Yeah.
enhancements to it, that's how the process would work.
And is that on our site, or they just know that if they use Aspire?
No, we would, so if you vote to do it, we would put it out.
You'd put it out. Okay, I see.
Yeah, we
Then
put
we
it
would
out,
do a
yeah, but we
public campaign.
can't do that
Okay.
until we know your position. on
Sure,
it.
I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
was wondering how we're
That's how it
getting
would
this-
work.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, that's what I wanted to know.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Member Belknap,
I have two questions, Chair. Is that okay?
please.
Okay, so what does it cost schools to use the Aspire? And number two, what does it cost us to keep it up and running?
Pretty much it costs nothing for the schools other than, the time that they need to spend ensuring that their utilization of it, for instance, for the October 1 counts or things like that. So that we don't charge a fee or anything for them to use Aspire. And then the costs associated for us to, just even to maintain it. And then if you vote to do it, to state it as just labor cost positions. We have the budget, though, that if you were to approve this, we would be able to, we wouldn't need additional funding to do it. So it's just labor costs, basically, for the maintenance of it. There might be some small software purchases or something now and then, but I think that would be very negligible. So labor.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
So I'm trying to figure out, why wouldn't a school use this if they get it for free? And why don't we charge a small fee where some districts aren't doing it and they're paying for their SIS system, and yet some schools are not?
Yeah, so that's, Chair, if I may.
Please.
So that's certainly an option, and that had been discussed before. I think the difference is, I did tell you how many are using it. The preponderance of the users of them are small, our charter schools and our small districts, or maybe even a little bit towards the medium size of a district, but they don't necessarily have the economies of scale of a larger district to purchase a newer system, to utilize. But we could use a scalable fee process and apply that if the board felt that would, be, the way that you want to go for that. So there's nothing preventing us from doing that, if that's Vice Chair Belknap's question.
Thank you.
Member Hanson?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So we had a moratorium on development for this. Were we trying to phase it out, and then why the change where we want to get into it again?
Yeah, so Chair, the agreement was pretty much that we only maintain or sustain it. I mean, there was never, a directive that we had to close the system down. What was agreed to in the interest of promoting market competition or something is that we would only sustain and maintain it to the extent of any changes in law or rule that, made it so that we'd have to update it. So we've always just done that. We've always just taken that approach of a sustainment. There was never any directive that we had to completely get rid of the system. That was the agreement, though, and then the board made a motion several years ago that directed staff to only sustain or maintain to the extent of whatever was required by rule or code, so.
And just a quick follow-up. So, and what's changed now to make us want to invest in it?
It's demonstrated as being a system that can ease reporting burdens for them. Should we be able to enhance, or whatever term we want to use, increase its capabilities, it would actually save a lot of time and effort. I get that there's the market concerns, but it is a proven system, because even when we did it, we did have some people some LEAs exit and choose other SISs. But for the most part, it is a system that really can make a difference to lessening reporting burdens and processes to our LEAs. So there's a different understanding of it now in that regard, is that it has that if we're allowed to do it, we can increase the capabilities of it so that it will assist LEA users with ease of use in reporting October 1 head counts. There's a lot of potential legislation and/or even your own rules that would warrant having a system that could provide easier use or access. And then at the same time, we're really at that decision point too, because all SISs, including Aspire, are required to interoperate with USIMS. So in a sense too, and I can't speak of whether it's not ready or not to interoperate in the current state it's in, but I really feel like it does need to be enhanced or do it in order to create that ability to interop with use, just like all the other SISs out there.
Okay, but not as many people left the ship then, I guess, when we stopped.
There were a few, but no, I
People
don't.
stuck with it.
Right, so it's been, well, 17, so it's been about 5 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were some that, and there are some that are using it now that are looking at other SISs. But the feedback I've gotten, and I haven't actually talked to all of them, right, is that, well, they did it because we weren't doing the enhancements to it too, so that in itself was, which I think was intended, right? If you don't do it, then they'll
Right.
move to a different one, but,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Chair?
Please,
I'll
go ahead.
just add, this came out of the task force, and so that's part of the impetus about why it's back on the agenda. And what we were hearing was, we had market opening, and those who could do it and afford it, did it. And so it introduced that element of choice, but 5 years later, there's some who, it's still not cost effective, and they brought it up. Why can't we just turn that back on? We've had a look, we're a small LEA, a charter, so I think it gives us the best of both, having introduced that market element. Now we can flip it back on, and those who need it can really be, tapped in and have all those efficiencies on
Makes
both sides.
sense.
So, yeah,
We
that's
gave
kind of where the,
market a chance to work, people stuck with it, let's
Yeah.
go with it then.
that's where it came out of that.
Okay.
I think we're there.
Member Klein.
Okay, so maybe you already answered this, but you say this is mostly for the smaller schools, or it's just being used by the smaller schools?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's their plans to scale it out? Like, is this a Utah-specific system?
Chair, if I may, it's a
Please.
system that is provided from us, but it's a choice, right? We don't mandate that any LEA have to utilize this system. So there will still be the opportunity for them to choose whether they stay in it or not, regardless of what's decided here today. So there's no mandate that you have to utilize this system.
Okay, and so it's Utah-built, is it in-house?
It's in-house, so there's that
in-house
user
system.
group, Chair, if I may, there's that user group that I mentioned, right? So they're made up of all sorts of representatives across Utah, across the public education system, that provide input on what an SIS, what right is with an SIS. So it's not driven by staff here, it's driven from bottom up. Now, obviously, it's not every LEA is represented, but there's enough diversity on that user group where, we feel strongly that we get good representation for what that SIS should look like.
Okay, thank you.
Member Belknap, Vice Chair Belknap.
Sorry, I had my one turn. Today, we voted to have USIMS be our number one priority. And in my mind, how do you make USIMS number one priority if we're spending money and time, because time is money, on Aspire, okay? So I really struggle with the fact that we're giving something for free. Who wouldn't take it, even if it's not quite up to par, when you talk about the market picking that? So the question I have actually is, when do we say enough is enough? When do we say, when we get another 100 users on it, or another 50, that we can't keep up with what the demands are on it? Or if we have to buy several pieces of software? When do we say it's no longer free, you're going to have to pay?
Yeah, okay, so to your first question about the priority of USIMS.
Really, you don't have to answer.
Well, but I see them as mutually supportive of one another, right? Because again, the code requires that all SISs and all financial systems interoperate with USIMS. So by way of ensuring that we have the capability at your direction to enhance the system, regardless of how many users there are, we do have to, because USIMS is a priority, we also have to make sure that system can interoperate with it. And we really take a risk of not being able to do that unless it's supported to do that. To your question about when is enough and we start to charge that, we can do that now. We could actually, come back to you and look at a scalable approach to this, for market comparisons and pieces to that. The only thing that I would put out based on the feedback I got, the reason, so what's at stake here is that we're sending a strong message to a lot of the smaller LEAs, charter schools and that we want to reduce their burdens, their administrative costs, and things like that. So, charging them a fee may be counterintuitive to, well, we want to make sure we, provide you with resources and money to get into the classroom rather than spending on this. So it's a balancing act. I would say that you could, as part of your motion today, or amend the motion to say, to us to do a study on scalability as far as, fees or payments to it for your consideration at a later date. So that if that date does come, or time when it says, enough, we're ready, we can provide you that analysis. I think that's a very good way. And it also demonstrates our resolve to ensure that we're providing the best system, but yet we're not trying to go against market competitiveness or things like that. So that's fine.
Okay.
Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
You're going to run that through finance.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask finance
Okay.
to do it.
Chair Huntsman.
So it's, as part of this,
We're
it's,
on it.
did you call me? Oh, okay, thank you. The other opportunity that's before us by turning this back on in a proactive way in the user group, you'll be able to get and be able to understand exactly what the new needs are and the future needs. And that's been turned off since 2017, but it's still been in place. We still have the staff. They just are not proactively competing against software people that were actually lobbying really aggressively back when we were making this choice. And so I think there's some evolution that takes place by turning this back on as a proposed solution to connect to USIMS, and that you can weigh this out. But there's no promises in
No.
what came out of finance or within the USIMS that there will not be a user fee. There isn't any promises at all in that. It's just, okay, let's get back proactive in finding out what the need is from the user groups, size it up. But almost all of those stakeholders that were around back then knew that there was some talk about fees. But I don't think you can go right to a fee and assess a fee until you know exactly what the magnitude of the new future project is, or how much of a solution USIMS is going to be for the small LEA as they're boarding the mothership of USIMS. Roger.
Thank you. Seeing no other lights, there's a motion on the floor that the board approve lifting the current moratorium on the building and programming of the Aspire SIS and permit USBE staff to build the system to provide the highest level of support and efficiency to the LEAs that choose to use the system, and with the interest of ensuring interoperability with the Utah Schools Information Management System, USIMS, as required with all other SISs that LEAs choose to utilize. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
That passes with one member opposed. Member Klein.
One more, Chair, can I go? Last action item, 13.6, amending board bylaws to require mid-year updates. The recommended action from Finance Committee is that the board approves amendments to the board bylaws requiring USBE staff to provide the mid-year update final calculations for public education funds every year to the Finance Committee.
Thank you. There, seeing no lights on the floor, we have a motion that the board approve amendments to the board bylaws requiring USBE staff to provide the mid-year update final calculations for public education funds every year to the Finance Committee. Those in favor say aye. Oh,
Can I just ask,
Member Hanson?
just quickly, so we get monthly updates here, and we usually have kind of an expanded one, it seems like mid-year. This is in addition to that? There was some,
It's funding, go ahead.
Well, so if I may, what you receive as part of the monthly budget report is pretty much centric to the money that stays in your budget here. The mid-year updates are the minimum school program updates to the programs In the past, we've had board members concerned about, LEA saying, well, the mid-year updates came out, but, my pupil well, no, that's not a good program example, but, I expected more funding. So by doing it publicly in front of Finance Committee, then you as the board and the public see also what changes based on the October 1 head counts were made. That's why I wanted to emphasize to you that the plan is to talk to you more about, the count, revenue, things like that, the counts are what affects the mid-year updates. But that's just really what drives this, is it's more along the lines of LEA, whereas the monthly budget report is here, is your budget here.
Thank you.
Yes,
That
sir.
helps. Appreciate it.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor that the board approve amendments to the board bylaws requiring USBE staff to provide the mid-year update final calculations for public education funds every year to the Finance Committee. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That passes unanimously.